Texas A&M just obliterated LSU last night, 49-25. I give the game 2.5 Chalai. Now, if you're an Aggie fan, this was a 5 Chalai classic. I understand that. But for the rest of America, you kind of sort of made it ugly in the second half, kind of pulled away. The Death Valley at night thing is true, but it's with a condition. And we discussed this last week. Death Valley at night, if LSU is tied, if they're leading, man, that place is insane. I've been there. I've stood on the field. It's unbelievable. It's unlike anything that you would ever see in American sport. I would argue global sport. However, we might as well have spoiled this game with how thoroughly we previewed it last week. You're not wasting time watching this show. But even if you didn't watch this show, I said what I said here elsewhere, and frankly, I think I articulated it a little better elsewhere. So Bradley, cue up the clip as we get into reacting to this game about what I said about it, ironically with David Nuno and the guys over at Texags. Here's what happens in Death Valley at night when things go wrong.
Death Valley on a Saturday night when LSU is losing empties very quickly. And the ones who remain to yell at Brian Kelly and to voice their displeasure. And it becomes very toxic for the home team, and it becomes very uncomfortable, and you love it if you're the road team. So, yeah, if you let LSU play a competitive game or they play with the lead, that place will be a nightmare for you. If you can flip the switch in there, it won't take much. The gasoline's already there. I don't know why you bit the match, but you just gotta strike the match and throw it. And if A&M strikes the match and throws it, that place will take care of the rest. You can actually weaponize a road environment. It's a very strange dynamic.
Yeah, I mean, no one delivered spoilers to me. I'm just saying, I saw it happen last year. Bama went down there and did it last year, and then A&M went down there and did it last night. Here's the thing about history and people always doubting Texas A&M because of what they have or haven't done historically. History is history because of what people that came before you did or didn't do. A&M's history has nothing to do with Mike Elko. A&M's history has nothing to do with Marcel Reed or Colin Klein or any of a number of guys on the team. Just name them. They weren't there in 1938 or 58 or 88. They don't have anything to do with A&M coming up short in the past. What they control is what happens now and moving forward. So I found myself watching this game last night from a very peculiar angle because I kept thinking about A&M fans. I think Texas A&M fans actually won that game last night. Now, Josh, that's not Marcel Reed. Marcel Reed's on the field. I know. Well, did you see Cassius Howell in that defensive front getting after the passer? Those are players. Did you see the game Colin Klein called? That's the offensive coordinator. I know all that. But see, here's what else was going on. Not nearly as many people were paying attention to what was happening in Lexington, Kentucky. But I was watching the guy A&M tried to hire 2 years ago get drug all over his home field by Tennessee. His name is Mark Stoops. A&M tried to hire Mark Stoops. You know who prevented it? A&M fans. A&M fans prevented it because they care about the program. Now, you can get criticized sometimes for loving your program to death, and you can get criticized for interfering in matters that you have no business interfering in, but A&M fans actually saved their program, ironically, from probably finding itself in the position Kentucky does right now or LSU does right now. And instead, they're the ones swinging the hammer instead of having the hammer swung at them. So all that stuff happened last night is downstream of A&M fans revolting against what would have been a terrible decision. So good for them. And then part two of it, if you kind of turn the game on late and you're saying, oh man, A&M's running it up on LSU in Death Valley. LSU must have done this wrong or that wrong. Buddy, yeah, it looks bad, but it could be a lot worse. When it was 49-18, I was thinking to myself, A&M threw a pick in the end zone, didn't they? Yeah, they sure did. It could have been a lot worse. Yes, it could have been a lot worse. So even when they went into the half and you come out in the second half and you're still trailing, I don't know how you felt. I felt there was never a doubt in the game. I felt so good about picking A&M in this game. I felt so good, I went on FanDuel and bet alt lines. I started laying 7.5 points, 10.5 points. So this game was very good to me last night. I'll tell you who it wasn't good to, though. Prez, Bradley, you guys can go ahead and begin to cue it up here. It's one of those rare cases. We had it happen once this season. Penn State got embarrassed so thoroughly that their own fan base reached out and said, hey, look, Just go ahead and do it. Just make us the Sarah McLachlan special. Like they were so ready for their own organization to be called into question, they proactively begged to be the Sarah McLachlan special. LSU got so thoroughly embarrassed last night, we have no choice. Their own people have asked for it. LSU is the Sarah McLachlan special. A&M scored more in the second half than LSU had allowed in any game so far this year, Death Valley at night. They got outrushed 224-60. A&M, they just got 2 more sacks since we started the show. They had 7 sacks, 11 tackles for loss. LSU was 3 of 14 on 3rd and 4th down. This is a gotta-have-it game, mind you. We continue. Brian Kelly spent the night basically treating his staffers like they were behind-the-counter employees at the DMV as they were executing a game plan he approved, by the way. So that was a pretty embarrassing scene. And then the fourth quarter of this game ends up being LSU hosting what amounted to a live infomercial on national TV for Texas A&M in their own building, while the road fans take over your own building because they're the only fans left in the building. And meanwhile, the ESPN cameras are ISOing on Fire Brian Kelly signs. So optically, worst case imaginable. Scoreboard, worst case imaginable. LSU emphatically this week's Sarah McLachlan special. It brings me no joy. Hey, wait just a second. Appreciate you guys watching. Most of you are subscribed. If you're not, please do so. It's free. It helps us keep the show free, and that's how we do college football year-round. All right, back to the video. I'll tell you what we're going to do, Jesse. Now, this is the first time that I know of that this has ever happened as we're talking about someone. You can confirm this in my ear, Jesse? Okay. This is crazy timing. So Brian Kelly's been fired as the coach at LSU as we're speaking. As I'm talking to you live on this Sunday night, we'll mark it 7:09-ish p.m. Central Standard Time. LSU has fired Brian Kelly. So I guess it makes sense. Coming right out of the Sarah McLachlan special, no less. Impeccable timing. Whoever decided to pull the lever down there when they did. Impeccable timing. So let's just go ahead and react to this live. Brian Kelly is done. He is out as the head coach at LSU. You can check out Pete Nakos. I'm sure he'll do a great job over at On3 laying out all the details and how the buyout's structured and all that stuff. I don't care. It's not my money. I don't have to pay it. Brian Kelly never understood the assignment at LSU. He never understood what the L stood for. And it turns out the L's ended up just standing for losses. But the L on that chest right there stands for Louisiana. Brian Kelly had no interest in Louisiana. He had interest in 2 letters. One of them's B, the other one's K. And L didn't really have much place in it, to the point where he got there and almost as part of this preconceived agenda flushed a lot of Louisiana people out of the building at Louisiana State University, including many who could have been very useful to him. One of them equipped players to whip his tail last night in his own building. That's Tommy Moffitt. He's the least of whomst, not the most of whomst or in total. But, you know, it's funny that it doesn't have anything to do with him being an outsider. Okay, Brian Kelly was an outsider. Sure, he's not from the South. Sure, he's not from Louisiana. Neither was Saban. Saban's the best they've ever had there. Well, where'd he come from? Came from West Virginia by way of Michigan State, but I'll tell you what he did. He looked at the LSU job and was attracted to it because of Louisiana. Brian Kelly was attracted to it because he thought he could make a lot of money and just kind of go spend some more money and get better athletes down there and win a title doing it the way he's always done it. And never did it factor into his decision-making, maybe I should harness what makes Louisiana great. And so it was really obvious, like as time went on, you noticed my tune changed on Brian Kelly. Really changed. Anyone who's watched the show for a while knows when LSU hired him, I thought he'd do really good things there. My tune pretty radically changed on him a couple of years ago, and I stopped praising him. We didn't have him on the show anymore. That was a conscious effort. Now, Brian Kelly never did anything to me behind the scenes. He was always really good to us, so there was nothing personal. There was no vendetta. It's personal to me because I love LSU. Because LSU, I've told the story many times, in 2019 was kind of responsible for this show blowing up. So I've always had a very, very special corner of my heart that's reserved for LSU. And I saw a guy that didn't properly respect the job he had. and didn't fully appreciate the job he had. He appreciated making the money. He appreciated the idea of having LSU on his chest because it meant, hey, I'm a major SEC head coach that's making 8 figures per year. I like that idea. I like standing on top of what other people have built to try and grab a brass ring that I couldn't grab at Notre Dame. I like that idea. But I'm not so in love with the idea of making myself one of them. He didn't ever want to be one of them, one of you, one of us, whatever you want to call it. So I cooled on him a couple of years ago because I kind of found out what the inner workings were about down there. He was checked out. He was totally checked out. Now, I don't mean that in the kind of way that a teacher is checked out the last 2 weeks of spring semester when she knows she's about to retire. Not that kind of checked out. A college football coach checked out, still working a ton of hours. So I don't mean it like that. But in the most critical parts of roster construction season there, portal, recruiting, this dude was on a beach. And it never really got talked about publicly. And I never talked about it publicly. But hey, man, he's gone now. So I'll talk to you about it now. I lost all professional respect for how he was going about his business there when I found out how checked out he was on some of the most critical parts of LSU football. And here's the thing, it's not a personal thing with him. I'm fine with Brian Kelly personally. But professionally, dude, there are not many jobs like the head coach at LSU. Some would argue it's the best job in the sport. If you don't believe that, it's a top 5 job in the sport. So however you view that, only a few select people get to hold those positions. You've got to dedicate your life to it. And he didn't. He dedicated some of it. But I mean, the guy's on a beach in Florida when a lot of the most critical periods of the calendar are going on, and there are other folks just grinding away in that building. And in some cases, you're landing kids he knows very little about. Guys, they added staffers that in some cases he didn't know a ton about. I mean, I would challenge, it's not my business, I'm not a reporter down there, but now that this era has come to an end, I think you'd be shocked at how little interaction he had with some people before they were added to his staff. Consequently, those people ended up being some of the best people to arrive in that building. He made some additions there that ended up being train wrecks. So that's what had me check out on Brian Kelly. So you probably noticed, if you've watched or listened to the show for a while, you've noticed I had kind of a tone change about him. Well, that was why. I didn't have a lot of respect for the way he was going about doing things there. This can be the best job in the country. The right person would view it as the best job in the country. Pretty much any coach would view it as a top 5 job. So like that's the range of ranking of the LSU job. But this is such a bombshell. I don't want to overstate. I mean, I was kind of ready for this to happen today. So my first instinct was to give you my personal opinion of Brian Kelly. It's just pathetic to have watched how this went down the last few weeks. It was really obvious what the strategy was. The strategy was, and I got to give our folks at Notre Dame credit, man. There were a lot of people I disagreed with in the past, and they had the book on him. And so they had it figured out well before some of us did. So credit to them. But the strategy was position yourself to take credit if it works. And then when you see it not working, reposition yourself to be sure there are several bodies in front of you to throw under the bus long before it's time for yours to be thrown under there. And that was the case last night. I mean, you know how pathetic it is to sit there and scream in the face of another grown man. I don't care if he's your subordinate, he's on your staff, he's making fractions you do. Every single offensive play call is coming through those headsets, and he hears every one of them. For you to sit there afterwards, special teams, offense, defense, whatever, and act shocked and scream, what are we doing? With a bunch of expletives thrown in, knowing good and well cameras are zoomed in on him. That's done with purpose. Because Brian Kelly may be many things, but stupid's not one of them. So that's done with purpose. And I would venture to think this time last week when we did this segment, and I was alluding to, him probably being put in a position to sacrifice some for the greater good of the organization. I think probably what happened last week around this time is, hey, if you go lay an egg, we're going to have a scalp or two. And it was probably going to be Joe Sloan. And I think that's why he made sure you saw him jump down Joe Sloan's throat last night, because it was going to be Joe Sloan's head on the guillotine today if Brian Kelly had his say. Well, it just so happens it's Brian Kelly's. And so that's the way it's gone down. That wasn't his plan, though. Now, he's going to get a ton of money to not coach anymore and to go golf and to go sit on the same beach that he was sitting on during key periods of the year anyway. So you don't really weep for Brian Kelly, but there are a bunch of staffers. They're grown adults, man. They're grown men. They're making good money in their own right, but I thought they were put in such a compromised position. It's one thing if you got a head coach fully checked in and you're doing your all and he's doing his all and it's not good enough. Yeah, you all bear the burden of responsibility. But, I mean, can you imagine how toxic that building has been? I can because I talk to people in it, but I'm telling you, that building has been beyond toxic. You don't have to know anybody there. Turn the game on. Have you ever seen a more miserable existence than an LSU staffer or LSU fans for that matter? Did you see that place last night? Did that look like anywhere you want to be? And I know a lot of you will say, well, hey man, you pay me $1 or $2 million. I'll put myself in that position. But here's the thing. If you're on the LSU staff and you're able to be making that kind of money, that also means you're equipped to be on several dozen other staffs where they're making comparable money, but they don't have to deal with that. So, you're in that position and all you're doing is staring out the window, frowning at all your friends and other places having the time of their lives. It's a tough job. It's a rough industry. But I'm thinking, from the perspective of an LSU fan right now, and I was just thinking today, what does the future hold for me? We lost out on Bryce Underwood. This is it for Garrett Nussmeier. This was kind of going to be our last ride with him. I didn't really have much confidence for the future under Brian Kelly, but now the future doesn't include Brian Kelly anymore, and so the LSU job is open. And I think we can speculate in the coming days. I said the other day, I think you'd be pretty surprised at how many names would be in the running if this job ever opened up. This job in the coaching world is viewed a little bit differently. I think a lot of it has to do with what Nick Saban did to the stature of the job, the profile of the job. And even since he left, this has been a premier job. I still think it is that. I think it is revered by a lot of people. You've got to make sure that the alignment is there. And that's been another critical issue down there. And that's kind of what I'm waiting to see. Like, we're live right now. So, Jesse, I don't know if we've heard anything beyond just Brian Kelly, but, I mean, I don't know how you don't look at Scott Woodward right now. Scott Woodward was responsible for the Jimbo Fisher fiasco at Texas A&M. He has now got the Brian Kelly disaster in his lap. I mean, they've had critical financial issues down there, in part because of Scott Woodward. So you've got an organizational situation that's just football related. Then you got an athletic department situation that the football situation resides under. So if I'm a premier head coach, you got to convince me you've got your affairs in order. Because the one thing I'm not going to do is go compete against Sark and DeBoer and whoever Florida hires and wherever Kiffin's going to be. Who knows? Really, who knows? Kirby, all these guys. I'm not competing against them with one hand tied behind my back. Because here's what happens. What happens is I've got the LSU job. So the public thinks I have every resource imaginable at my disposal. And the public thinks I'm working eye to eye or maybe even at a slightly advantaged position relative to my peers. And all the while, behind the scenes, I'm not. I'm looking up at them because they've got full reign and they've got a well-oiled machine of an athletic department, and I don't. I'm not stepping into that. And don't expect to ask a premier name to step into that unless you overpay for them, which they've done in the past, or if you make some internal changes down there. So let's see. Let's see how that turns out. But it can be the best job in the country, guys. LSU season, for now, is dead. I would expect Frank Wilson. Jesse, do we know this? I would expect Frank Wilson to be named interim head coach. Hey, look, I don't know about Frank's prospects as a head coach. One thing I will not doubt about Frank Wilson loves LSU. If you want a guy who loves LSU, if you want a radical departure from what the norm was, you're going to trade in some coaching credentials or head coaching credentials, but Frank Wilson loves LSU. This is going to be the coaching search that every other coaching search works downstream of. I cannot imagine the people at Florida tonight. I cannot imagine the fists pounding the table in Gainesville. The Florida job's a good job too. I'm just saying the last thing on this planet those people wanted was to see LSU pull the trigger when they did. Oh, man. Guys, if you're not subscribed to the channel, I'm telling you, this is going to be the wildest season of coaching carousel you've ever seen, and we're smack dab in the middle of conference championship run, and we're smack dab in the middle of the playoff run. The playoff rankings haven't even come out yet. So we're going to have the Florida job open, the Arkansas job open, the LSU job has just come open even as the show began. You got to subscribe to the channel. It's free. This is all we talk about. We're not breaking into NBA coverage to talk about the Brian Kelly firing. This is all we do. So if you're subscribed to the channel, thank you. If you think you are, check and make sure you are. And if you're not, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't sign you up for anything. It doesn't cost you anything. It just helps us make sure that we get to do this without the constraints of network oversight. You know, the stuff you guys complain about all the time. The reason a lot of the coverage nationally has been sullied in your mind's eye, well, we don't have to work under those constraints because we get to call our shots because you subscribe and you help make it happen. So we appreciate it. Yeah, so what I wanted to do, Jesse, because A&M actually won the game. So I want to continue to talk about A&M. We just had to fit the Brian Kelly firing right there in the middle. Oh, man, 7:23. Texas A&M just coming out of this thing. I know they looked super impressive last night, and they did. Okay, here's what we got to make sure of with Texas A&M. We got to make sure that they peak at the right time. If Texas A&M peaks at the right time, they can win a national championship. Make no mistake about that. The people who doubt that only doubt that because of the past. You can't be doubting that because of football-related reasoning. You can't be. There is one thing you could be thinking. You could be thinking Ohio State is like a super team and no one's beating them. If you hold that opinion, then maybe you're not doubting A&M. You just think everyone's a distant second, third, fourth, fifth to Ohio State or Indiana even, or Ohio State and Indiana. Look, if you think that, I'm not going to try and talk you off that. But if you don't think that, and if you think everyone's gettable, the only other reason I could think of that you're not circling A&M as a national title contender is because they haven't ever done it, and so if they haven't ever done it, I don't believe they can do it. Your prerogative, again. And penalties are an issue with them. They are still turnover prone. It's totally new territory. November is the longest month of the year. We always say that around here. So this organization is about to experience a lot of firsts. I grant you all that. But man, they're an extremely dynamic team. They're a dangerous team. I think their best ball is in front of them. Their pass rush can change a game. Their receivers can change a game. Their tailbacks can change a game. Their quarterback can change a game. They can win a multitude of different ways. They've won shootouts this year. They've won slugfest this year. So if we were describing Alabama or Georgia that way, you'd make them the title favorite. It just so happens it's A&M. So they've got a game at Missouri in a couple of weeks. They got South Carolina at home. They got Samford. And then they go to Texas. There is a distinct possibility they are undefeated in Atlanta. That is a distinct possibility. Frankly, at this point, they've got some breathing room. They can lose 2 of their last 4 and go to the playoff. Alabama is the odds favorite to win the SEC. A&M is right behind them. There's a little gap between the rest. So right now, those 2 are favored to face off in Atlanta. But what a night this ended up being. What a chain of events this ended up triggering.